All right. So thank you again for allowing me to conduct this interview with you. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Two Boys from Hitchins and your process in writing this book. I want to ask you, can you tell us something about yourself and your book?
Well, I grew up in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains here in eastern Kentucky. Grew up in poverty and no indoor plumbing or any of that stuff. No modern conveniences. But my brother and I, we were dreamers. We dropped out of school at a young age and went to New York, and then ended up back in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I finished my education there and then I met two school teachers in a boarding house there that were conducting adult education. I finished my education there in the boarding house. They were conducting those, and they were great educators, and I was grateful. And having been out on my own for a number of years at that time, I was more receptive to getting the education at that time than I was when I left the school back in my hometown of Hitchins. And having received my GED, we, together with my brother Paul, we went to Washington, D.C. for bridge painting, where we had learned to climb back in the hills of Kentucky, climbing, rock climbing and everything. So it suited us very well, working on bridges. But here we had water underneath us, so if we fell, it was a little more cushion than it would have been back in the hills of rock climbing. So we put about 3 years in bridge painting in the D.C. market. Well, a lot of bridges in that area crossing the Potomac River were being redone. And so we started attending the church, and the church needed painting too. The church inside and outside, the steeple, and so we surprised the pastor of the church that we could paint his steeple without even putting up any scaffolding or anything, because we could climb all around it. And so we got to know those folks very well. And so one of them was a former Marriott executive person, and we got to talking to him about the restaurant business. And so we started exploring franchises, restaurant franchise. And one day he came home when we were painting his house, and he said, "Here, boys, I got something you might want to work on. Here's a Dallas roast beef sandwich restaurant. This would be better than some of those other pizza places you've been looking into." So he made us contacts with other members in the church, and after we bought the franchise, everybody was wanting to invest. It was a good, ripe time for investors to want to get into restaurant business, because there was a chain called Geno's. They made a lot of people wealthy, and the Geno's with their Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise, and Geno's Marchetti was a famous football player, so they all got in on his thing, and the others were eager to get in on a new thing, like our Dallas roast beef sandwich restaurant. So a lot of members of the church came in, and other members came. So we had to do a filing with the Maryland Securities Exchange to raise money. And having done that, we raised over $250,000.
That's a lot of money. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Can you share a little bit about your book and what it's about?
Well, the book is about my career, leaving home early in life and journeying to first completing my education in Cincinnati, and then going on to DC then, and surrounding ourselves with good people, and we were baptized into the church too, and so they brought a lot of leaders in to our restaurant operation. And the book, then we go on and tell that story.
Okay.
and my travels and our travels together, even before we got into the restaurant business.
Well, I look forward to reading more about the book because it talks about a memoir of your adversity, adventure, and achievement. So it's a lot of a life experience, and I believe that's what people really need to hear right now: how to push through adversity and enjoy the adventure while getting to all those achievements. So, how many books have you written, and which one is your favorite?
Well, this is my favorite one because it's the only book I have written of my in talking to friends and acquaintance, telling my life story, as I've mentioned here to you. And they would often say, well, Edward, you ought to write a book of all you've done and all the adversity you've encountered. And so eventually, after I'd sold the restaurant business, I thought, well, I got some free time. So we started putting down some notes and writing the book. Then I tied up with a former author herself, and she helped me get started in the beginning. And then I lost her, but my son, luckily, he got out of the Coast Guard, so he joined with me on. He had a better education than I, so he could help me with the computer's end of it.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun doing this with your son. Now, Edward, what part of the book was the most fun to write?
Well, I think the most fun was growing up in the hills of eastern Kentucky as a young man and getting together with a lot of the young men here, and we'd go rock climbing and swimming in our favorite swimming holes in the creek, and hiking and camping out in the hills. I guess that was the most fun. Recalling those memories of my early youth was the favorite part, and that really was a spinoff to make me go on and tell the rest of my story then, because I enjoyed so much about recalling my early memories. And I thought it helped me with my memory too, to see that I could recall all those. One cousin said to me when I gave him a copy of the book, Edward, how do you recall all these things? And your memory's so good.
Oh, that's great. And then now you get to share them with other generations of your family and friends, all the things that you were able to enjoy when you were younger. Edward, what inspired the idea for your book?
I guess my whole life story inspired me to the name and to do the story, and the memory of adversity we had, and we tell about that, and the achievements then, and meeting good influential people who were members of the church that we attended there, and that was good. They led me into the right paths of righteousness and doing honest things then in life, even though in my youth I may have done a lot of wrong things.
Well, haven't we all, right? And I think the good thing about life is I'm Catholic, so I believe that God sends you people in the right times of your life for you to be more and do more. So it seems like that's what happened to you. So thank you for sharing that. What characters in your book most similar to you or the people you know?
Well, I guess other members I associated with myself back at Washington, D.C. at the church, many of those were the characters I admired, and I wanted to be like many of them. A lot of them were missionaries with the church. And so I admired that, and I admired the fact that they had well-established careers, and I wanted to better myself then. And so I tell about some of those people in the book as well.
Okay. And how did you come up with the title for your book?
Well, then when we started writing, and we looked back over knowing that we grew up in the village known as Hitchins, I thought what better title is, we're from that area, and two boys was my brother and me. So we selected Hitchins then.
And so I know you're the one who wrote the book, and it's about you. So there's a question here: would you and your main character get along? I mean, talking about now and when you were a lot younger, do you think these two characters would get along?
Oh, I think I would have. I may wanted to try to reform him a little bit, but what he is today, meaning myself. I
Well,
did a lot of reckless things.
and I mean, I believe that if you probably didn't go through those things, you wouldn't be the best version of yourself right now. So it
That's
probably
true.
could have been the opposite, right?
Yeah. What I did in the early life strengthened me for the future ahead.
Well, I'm glad that you two would get along right now. Now let's talk about what your process was to complete this creation. What's your writing process like? Are you more of a plotter or a pantser?
Well, I guess I did some plotting and recalling my memories and research in my mind and papers and everything, and looking back on the people I'd dealt with and recalling and making sure I didn't give the wrong impression of some of those people and end up with some kind of litigation. I had that process in mind, particularly the companies I worked for as well. I used a lot of, say, alias names because I didn't want to mention the people, and it'd come back to haunt me in litigation or something. Maybe they wouldn't like me having their name in print. So that was a process in making sure I didn't slander somebody, which could be taken slander if I wrote about them in the wrong way that the publisher didn't like.
Well, thank you. These, I mean, the answers to these questions are really going to help people that are just starting out and want to have achieved what you have already achieved. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Well, my writing space was two different rooms in my home, and we had a lot of clutter there, of course, and doing my research and memories and working with my son when he got out and worked with me on the book. So he was a good researcher. Of course, being able to go to the website and everything and get the information we needed.
And if you were to write a spin-off about a side character, which would you pick?
Well, I thought about that when I saw the question that was sent to me. I thought, no, I don't want to get involved in a spin-off. I don't think I would. So we spent probably 4.5, 5 years on this spin-off, which ended up in the book. A lot of time consuming and rich in your memory.
Well,
I don't envision writing a spin-off.
okay. Well, I mean, you never know, right? The first time is always the hardest one. The second time might be a lot faster than expected.
Yeah.
How did you celebrate when you finished writing your book?
Well, we haven't celebrated yet. I'm kind of waiting to see. I'll see the sales boost, and we're trying to construct some promoting. I see some promoting. Maybe it'd be a time to celebrate if we see the thing selling.
Well, that's something to look forward to, right? Now you got to think of how you're going to celebrate when that starts kicking off.
Yeah.
And,
we'll plan it right.
and Edward, what is your kryptonite as a writer?
Well, I haven't given much thought to that. We just, together with my son, kind of put our notes together and had a lot of paper flying around the room and copy machine and going to other places to copy pictures and everything. That few of them we have in the book, but we copied a lot more than we put in there. So that was probably part of our process.
And has writing and publishing a book changed how you see yourself?
I think it does. I think it's strengthened my character and making me feel good about myself. And looking back over it, I oftentimes read segments in there myself. Boy, did I do that? So it strengthened me overall.
Well, that's good to hear that you came out of the process seeing yourself in a different light. And do you see writing as a spiritual or therapeutic practice?
I think both spiritual and therapeutic.
And uh huh.
And I think it's strengthened me overall.
That's good. And Edward, would anyone in your family disapprove of anything you have written?
No, they've all been excited when it came out after got a little publicity around here in this local area where I grew up, and they all were running out and getting copies of the books. And one cousin, she bought about six to give her family. Many of them would be away, and she'd send them books of it, copies of it.
Well,
Probably the only guy in the county who had written the book then, a member of the family anyway. So she was quite excited about it. I
well,
think she bought at least the family about 6 copies.
that's good. It might be Christmas gifts, right? This could be a good way to end the year, looking towards 2023 in a different light and a new adventure, right? Seeing it from your eyes based on your book.
You bet.
So, if you had to describe yourself in just 3 words, what would those be?
I guess more or less a loner and a family man, and I believe looking back on the hard times in the early days that my parents went through, they had poverty, but they were both hard-working people, and I became a hard worker, and so I see myself as a hard worker and thankful for the life I've had thus far, and hope I'll be rewarded with a few more years before I want to check out.
Well, that's the best gift you can give to your kids, right? Showing them how hardworking you are, and then they can pass it on to generations that will come. Now, what is the most valuable advice you've been given about writing?
Well, the most valuable life I could give about it is get away from it as quickly as possible, probably. And for myself anyway, it was several taxing years, but I think it improved my memory overall. It probably kept me from, like my older brother, he fell into Alzheimer's before he was my age. And of course, he's been passed away a number of years now. So probably it's helped my memory and strengthened my overall character. So the writing has been a good therapy for me.
That's why you got to write that spin-off.
Maybe so.
Right?
I'll look forward to it after
And
I look through my book.
what do you think is the best way to improve writing skills?
Well, not being a teacher or director, or I don't know how to advise others into the writing business. I know it's been a challenge for me, and if they got a son as bright as my son, might be surround themselves with that. They'd have the help that I have enjoyed.
That's good. Surround yourself with people that know more than you, right?
You
Um,
bet.
and we're down to our last 2 questions. What advice would you give to help others create plot lines?
Well, just do your research and look into the character that you're trying to achieve, or the character you're creating it, the only advice I could probably give.
Well, I'm sure that's really going to help some of our viewers prepare what they've been trying to finish, right? Now, can you tell us where we can purchase your books or your book? And if you have a website, please mention your website.
Yes, you can buy it at Barnes and Noble and many book connections, bookstores everywhere. I'm told many of the people who've heard about my book here locally have bought books from those various channels. And the website is what you just constructed this morning there.
Okay. Do you know what the website is?
Yes, the website is https / Here, I'll let my co-author here read it off to you. He can probably.
All right.
bookmarksdemo.com. Edward Isaacs /#.
Thank you. And thank you, Edward. I really enjoyed this interview today. I look forward to reading more about and seeing more about the book since I know more about it through your eyes.
Okay. Hope you enjoy reading it, right? And read the back side of the book as well.